Hello, everyone. This is Ed K. Smith from Online Impact, here with my lovely co-host, Lois. How are you, Lois?
Morning. Great, thank you.
Welcome back to the My Livelihood Podcast. And we have a guest on the show today, Mr. John Blake. Hey, John, how are you?
Good. Great, thanks. Yeah.
Hey, John.
John
Hello.
is a sales growth specialist. Lois and I have worked with John in the past, and we have also done some of his workshops. And he is a coach and mentor in the sales training and mentoring space. So he is one of the top guys in Australia, and we've loved to have a chat with him and find out more about what he's doing and how he can help you and how you can help yourself improve your business with sales, the topic that a lot of people seem to ignore or want to get away from for some reason. John, why is that?
I think that it happens for a number of reasons. I think probably the main one is that people think that just because they're good at what they do, that the world will beat a path to their door. So they're led to believe, especially at places like university, that unless, as long as you've got a piece of paper, and as long as you're good at what you do, the world will beat a path to your door. And obviously, you need to be good at what you do, but that's a given. The rest of it is about how you position yourself and how you organize yourself so that you can actually accept clients. And it's not taught at university. I think it maybe they might touch on it. Like the people that I speak to, they say, "Oh yeah, we did half a unit on that," or it's almost like, "Yeah, we did a unit on that, but I wasn't really listening." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's other situations where. So I did some work with a chain of audiology stores on the East Coast, audiology clinics, I should say, and they're actually told that sales is like bad, like that that it is overtly conveyed to them in their studies that it's a bad thing. Now they're selling a $12,000 to $15,000 product. Like if someone's got really poor hearing, the best outcome for them is to buy a $15,000 product. It's because it's a technology thing. The better the technology, without going into it in too much detail, the government funded ones, like I guess the equivalent, because there's lots of parallels in terms of optical and hearing, but the equivalent is the government funded frames where you get 2 frames for free through your private health cover every year. Well, the equivalent in terms of hearing to those ones, the ones that you get that are fully funded or the majority funded, and the best ones that you can get, it's like night and day. Like the technology is just, and so you're coming out of uni, you're being told not to sell, yet the best outcome that you can create for one of your clients so that they can actually hear again is a $15,000 product. Well, you actually need to be able to structure a conversation where someone sees the value in that.
Of course. Of course. Look, it's very obvious. It's very obvious, Giles. But look, we'll deep dive into that in a sec. But let's do a bit of a retro.
That's one reason.
Yeah, that's one reason. That's a bloody good one. So we'll come back to that point. But speaking of university, let's do a bit of a history of John. Who is John? What's he been doing? How did he get into being a sales trainer and coach and mentor and advisor? How did he get that? So did you go to university, John? Is that something you did out of high school?
I did not.
You did not? Okay, yep.
No, I left school after year 12. I started a graphic design course, and I was sponsored for competitive surfing on a state level. I represented the state once or twice, and I was contacted by my sponsor, and he said to me, "Look, we've got a position here in the agency. We've had a sales guy that's just left. are you interested? In fact, he didn't ask me because I was underage. He went and asked my parents. He actually did a great sales job on my parents. So I get back from this surf trip down in Denmark, not the Denmark in Europe, but Denmark in Western Australia. And I get this, John, can you come and have a chat to us? I'm like, oh my God, what have I done?
Of course, that's
so
the first thing.
And it was like in the lounge room, can you come and sit and talk to us in the lounge room? I go, oh God, this is like, I'm just like scanning my brain. What could I have possibly done what they've found out about? So anyway, this guy had contacted mum and dad, said, look, I know that John's at Tech. I've got this position and I wanted to bounce it off you first. And so I started working there, answering the phones, doing account stuff, then got into sales, was there for 4 years, left there, moved to Sydney, was the sales and marketing manager for Arnett Sunglasses for 3.5 years, had another rep job over there as well. Essentially helped that business, together with a team of reps and some really good product, go from about $1 million to 6.5 million in 3.5 years.
Wow.
Fantastic.
It was when I was 22.
Yeah.
And so that was exciting.
Yeah.
And then
22. Wow. Yeah. That's, awesome.
It was incredible. And then I left there, moved back to Perth, started up my own wholesale business. I was the agent for Mambo apparel, Vans shoes, electric sunglasses, and a whole bunch of optical frames and sunglasses like Yves Saint Laurent, Ted Baker, a whole bunch of other brands that I represented in my agency for about 10 years. And then I sort of got to a point where I'd been in the surfing, action sports, apparel, that kind of thing for about 17 years. And I'm like, I think I'm done. It's like, I've been a rep, I've been a sales and marketing manager. I've, had great success in both of those things. I've had my own wholesale agency. I've run that for 10 years. And it's like, I think I'm done with this, but I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know, I had to have that, I don't know what I'll be when I want to grow up.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what I want to be when I grow up. I probably needed blowers.
You did. Absolutely.
And you found your way.
I did. And I realized, I was like, okay, well, what are all the common denominators? And it's like, well, my success in sales came from a lot of the study that I did, a lot of the reading and the books I read and the tapes and the success I had at Arnett. One of the key things, 3 pillars. So we had great product and we had great people, but one of the really linchpins, of that success was we trained our reps on how to sell to retailers to help retailers to improve the sales, not just in our sunglasses, but in the actual category. Mm-hmm. And then we trained the actual floor staff on how to sell to the general public. So there was this common thread of, training and success in my own business and success in the businesses that I worked with. And then it was a transition into the idea of setting up a consulting business in the action sports industry. So that's what I did. And there was no one else doing it. And for 5 years, I was the action sports sales training, coaching, consulting guy.
Yep.
So I did that for 5 years and then just started slowly branching into other industries. So I've worked with, financial services, telecommunications, building, anything that you can think of. At the moment, I've got a client that does talk tools. I've got another client that is a fleet services company. I've got another client that's a PT, so there's just massive broad spectrum of people. And there just aren't too many situations that I've encountered where I haven't, got in there, learned about the product and trained their people on how to sell more stuff.
Yeah. The principles are universal. So that's the thing. You might have slightly different techniques or different strategies for different products and different services and industries, but the principles of sales remain the same. And it's a common saying that nothing happens until a sale is made. And which I always find funny that people then have this issue with selling because their whole industry, their whole business, their whole income depends on someone actually going yes and saying, I want that, I want this. But they're concerned. I think my experience, and you tell me whether you think this is a common thing you come up against, is a lot of people have bad experiences with people who are selling to them in an incorrect manner, and often it's referred to, like used car salesman or blah blah blah, that type of thing, where they feel like they're getting conned. So does that come across to you a lot when you're dealing with people and training for sales?
Yeah. In fact, because there are so many, coaches out there,
mm-hmm.
I often will say is like my biggest competition isn't somebody else who does what I do, because in many ways, what I do is quite, is quite unique. I don't really see that as competition. What I see as competition is the baggage that the person that I'm talking to has from the last bad experience that they had from somebody who could easily have been in sales training, but they could have been a marketing person as well, where they got promised a whole bunch of stuff and from a consultant and they got ripped off. People carry that baggage and there's that embarrassment and and the humiliation and the shame with that. And that's my biggest competition, because people are like, I was taken advantage of and I felt stupid, and I don't want people to take advantage of me again. And that's why, in many ways, when I started this business, people were like, oh, you need a brand. In fact, the first 7 years when I had a business partner in this business, we operated under a brand. But since then, for about the last 8 years, I've operated under my own name. And I actually say that to people. I say, you know what? Because, people have that skepticism. They're like, well, how do I know that, you're going to do what you say that you're going to do? And I'm like, well, simple. It's like, I live in Perth, which is the, smallest country town in the world. And I trade under my own name. So, I need my clients to be ecstatic with the help and the work that we're doing together. Otherwise, there's no way in the world I would have lasted 17 years.
Yeah.
Completely.
The word will get around, and people, won't want to have a bar of you. So,
well, your name is your brand, John, and that's the thing. Ultimately, regardless of whether you call yourself, whatever, or John Blake, it's still your brand, and the brand reputation either of the company or the individual will always precede itself.
That's it. And I always remembered that in the wholesale business, is because, the retailers would say, John from Arnett, or John from Mambo, or Dave from Rip Curl, or, Harry from Quicksilver. And they'd always say the person, and then they'd say the company. So they always buy the person first, and then they buy what you have to sell.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting, John, thinking back to that lounge room experience for you, because your sponsor obviously saw something in you and saw some character in you. And it's interesting because I work with a lot of athletes in career development now, and athletes, while they're looking for their next thing and obviously performing in their sport. So the ones that can understand how to promote the brand and actually even be a good statesperson for the company that's sponsoring them has a huge advantage, I think, in their future career as well. So obviously he saw something in you.
Yeah, and I think something I didn't tell you, but there's actually a couple of lessons in it, is that the thing that made him want to contact my folks was I bumped into him at a service station, and what had happened is that I was driving this bloody Toyota Corona, and the battery had died.
Oh no!
And so I go to start it, and it's got petrol in it, but the battery's buggered. So I've gone, okay, well. So I said to the guy, I said, look, I'm going to need a new battery by the looks. Would it be okay with you if I just quickly used your phone? And so I rang the old man. I said, look, my battery's buggered. Going to need a new one. Do you reckon at some point you could drop past and pay this guy for a battery if I can get him to put it in now, and that way I'll be able to get to TAFE on time. And the guy said, yeah, no probs. And so then I bumped into the guy that ultimately hired me at the service station. And he said, "Oh, what's up?" And I said, "Oh, my battery's, buggered." He said, "Oh, do you need a lift anywhere?" And I said, No, it's sorted." And he goes, "Oh," he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Oh, the old man's going to drop some money off. The guy's put a new battery in, and I'm good. I'll get to TAFE on time." And I could see him sort of going,
Wow.
like 17, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
to me, it was just, that's what that's just what I did.
Sure.
But so there's two lessons in there. One, for a business owner, if you're looking for staff, sometimes looking on the job boards is not the place.
Yes.
You want someone who impresses you in a real life work experience. And I always say to people, like from a hiring perspective, make sure that you've got a virtual bench. Make sure that you know who the best salespeople in your industry are. Make it your business, because it is your business, to know who the best people in your entire industry are, and develop a relationship with them. Don't overtly go and try and snake them, but develop a relationship with them, because that way, if you have somebody that leaves, you've got somebody on, somebody's number that's a great salesperson that you've got a good relationship with, in your phone. You can ring them up and say, "Look, I don't know what, where you're at right now with what you're doing, but I've just had this vacancy come up.
Yeah.
And if you're open to it, I'd love to have a chat to you about the possibility of you doing it." So suddenly, if you've got like half a dozen people on your virtual bench, you'll never have to worry about having to find a good salesperson ever again.
Yeah. And also they may be mentoring people and helping people, and they know of people. So yeah.
Birds of a feather flock together.
They do. I was just thinking that exact same thing.
There you go.
Yep. Totally.
So yeah, there's a couple of lessons in that, and the other lesson is always do your best, because you never know who's watching.
Yeah, and that's the case, isn't it? I mean, people can review now very publicly, and if they feel like they've been pressured by a salesperson, they'll be very quick to say that and that kind of thing.
Oh, it's ruthless now.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to hide.
Oh yeah, and people, and it's it's that classic thing. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. But most people do. They do things with the best of intentions, but often they are taught a dysfunctional way of selling. By people that think that it's somehow smart, or it's a virtue to be aggressive. And people, it's like it's like they've got this new tool, and they're given some language and some phraseology that that works, but they have the wrong intention behind it.
Yes.
Completely.
And the wrong intention with the right language can be disastrous, because people hate that. They're going to push back, and again, that experience just burns the trust that people have, and the good that they're looking to find in other business people. So
yeah. I think some of it is the old school, and some great classics that came out of the 70s, and your Zig Ziglars and those sorts of things. But sales maybe got a bit of a bad rap over that time as well, because people saw it as a manipulative or using tools of persuasion in some sort of underhand way, when in fact it's all about communication and understanding the other person and filling their needs, is my kind of slant on it.
Glenn Ross comes to mind.
Oh, absolutely.
The movie.
But it's a tough one, because because it's all about intent, and people can become delusional about their own intent. They can think that they're doing the right thing, because there's this whole school of thought that's like, well, if you're not doing everything, if you believe in what you do and you're not doing everything that you can to get your product in the hands of your potential client, then you're ripping them off. And so that sentence in itself is quite dangerous. In the right context, if there's someone who wants to do something and there's some blockages that you can help them to dissolve, and their intention is to actually want to do it, then that's cool. But if their intention is that they're not motivated, or they perhaps it's not the right thing for them, and they're saying that it's not the right thing for them, and you can sense that it's not the right thing for them, and you try and bang that person over the head with a club and drag them kicking and screaming over the line, it's never going to go well. They're going to be the client from hell. Never going to refer anyone to you.
Yeah.
And you've got an unmotivated client. So once you've got them and you ask them to do stuff. So like, for what you do, Ed, like you've got someone who's bought a digital web and ad strategy. Well, you ask information from them to build a website or start a campaign or whatever, they're not going to do it. They're not going to be motivated. They're not going to be compliant, So it's just
completely, absolutely, yeah. Completely.
But it can be hard. It can be hard to unsell some people, like you're kind of saying, maybe you should go here, or, this is a better fit for you because it's not a good fit. But sometimes the more you do that, the more they want. So it can actually be quite hard to non-sell or unsell.
The skill comes. It's a powerful skill, and it comes with a big amount of responsibility.
Yeah.
And you've got to have that judgment, and you've got to take. Even if you have a personal financial need, you've got to put that aside.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Those ones never work out well. If you get people across the line to make that decision for the wrong reasons, it always bites you in the butt. And it's not good for them. It's not good for you. It's just not good at all.
No.
So
it doesn't end well. And I've been doing this for 17 years. I've looked at and read from and learned from almost everybody that is masterful in this area on the planet. And so I've tried this stuff, and I can tell you it doesn't end well. From personal experience.
Speaking of masterful,
it's only happened a couple of times.
Yeah. Speaking of masterful, Lois and I are fortunate enough to both have done your sales masterclass 1-day workshop. And just so people know, we're not sponsored by John to say this. We are not remunerated by John to say this. We are saying this because John is the best. And we've both attended his 1-day workshop, and it's fantastic. We'll put some links to that in the show notes as well, because at the time of this recording, John's got one coming up again on the 30th of June.
Yeah, Tuesday.
In the Rendezvous Hotel in Scarborough, if you're in Perth. So
you're getting back out there, John.
Yeah, it's the first one. It's the first one. I've developed an online version of it as well, but because I've kind of had to.
Yeah. We've all been doing that.
Yeah, and that's something we're going to get into. I was going to ask you how you've been going with that sort of stuff, but keep going on the.
But yeah, I've got a live one on the 30th of June. And I can only have 20 people there. But that's normally about how many people I like to have in the room anyway, so it suits me.
Nice bit of scarcity there, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate to go along, and I actually took a couple of clients along who I've been working with in career transition. And, I'm always everyone needs to know how to sell themselves. I mean, when you were talking before about the health professionals leaving uni and that sort of thing, it's like, yes, they need to sell a product perhaps later, but actually first port of call is to sell themselves to a potential employer or start their own thing. And I've got more and more people that I'm working with who are a blend of that, so that portfolio career. So they might be looking to gain some more work, but actually sometimes going to an organisation to get some work with them as a contractor or a freelancer is really new to them. So and I remember one of my clients, he was just so blown away, John. He was just like, wow, that's the best day of 7 I've ever been to. And I was like, yep, pretty fantastic. So and look, lots of stuff was refresher for me, but I learned plenty of things as well. So I'd really recommend it. I know it's for business people mainly, that's where you're slanting it, but I felt like the people that I took along and myself, we really got a lot of nuggets of gold out of it, and lots of interaction too, which you get to practice a bit of what you're doing, which is great.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely of you to say that. I get business people there, but I also do get a lot of salespeople that come along. So business owners that send some of their senior people that they want to invest in. So it's always a great bunch of crew, and it's
an interesting point, because I think a lot of people who are salespeople if they haven't been educated and trained in really the most efficient manner, they do have a lot of stuff to undo. Some bad habits that don't really benefit the client or customer, and also don't benefit the business that they're either running or working for. And you certainly cover a lot of that. And so Lois and I have both been fortunate to have had lots of exposure to different sales training workshops and people over the years. And some things I would look back on and go, oof, that was a bit dodgy, or I wouldn't want to put that into practice anymore. But I think going to something like that, if you're in that space, is a critical thing to do on a regular basis, just to get a reminder. And one of the things that you said, amongst many other things, but this one always popped into my head, and I have this conversation with our own clients, and because we do a lot of lead generation, is the amount of people who don't follow up leads, or the amount of people who don't persist in contacting their potential client, not persisting in a aggravating, annoying way, but not following up, not doing any of that sort of stuff. How often do you see that as being a challenge for people who get leads and just call someone once or email someone once and then that's it, they just drop it from that point on? Do you see that a lot?
All the time. That's the single easiest way I can help somebody to improve their results.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down. And it's always the first thing that I do with anyone that starts with me, is we just pull out all of the quotes that they've sent out that haven't converted, and we just give them a call. Because most people will, like on average, the average amount of time, and I've been doing this now and asking this question for 17 years.
Yep.
The average number of times that someone will call somebody that they have given a quote to, but that person hasn't made a commitment, is about 1 to 2 times.
So it's not even 2; it's 1.5 or something.
Yeah, it's about 1.5. It's about 1.5.
Yeah.
And most people, most sales take around about 5 to 15 follow-ups to convert. And the reason that it does, the other, really, I call this a smoking gun piece of data, is that the reason I know about this is that in America, they're kind of better with their data than, obviously it's more scalable and there's, more stuff going on over there. But they have these companies that they're called did you buy campaigns? And so someone will invest with a company like yourself and generate a whole bunch of leads. So let's say they generate 100 leads in their time working with you, and let's say that 20 to 25 of them converted off the front end, and so there's 75 that are still unconverted. So what they do in these did you buy campaigns is that every 90 days there'll be a team of not salespeople, just people on the phone. They'll ring up and they'll say, hey, look, I know that you inquired about buying a pool or getting some blinds put in your home. This isn't a sales call. I was simply calling to find out if you ended up going ahead with that project. And they call them every 90 days to see if they bought. And what they discovered is that around about 15 to 20% of people will buy in the first 90 days. And between the 90-day mark and the 18-month mark, a further 30% of people will buy.
Wow. Yeah.
They'll make a buying decision. So 50% of people are actually buying within the first 18 months.
Yeah.
But the thing that blows people away is that there's actually a higher percentage of people that are going to buy between the 90-day mark and the 18-month mark than what there is between the initial point of quote or initial point of proposal or whatever you want to call it and the 90-day mark.
Yeah.
People don't realize that. So they get this kind of bird's eye view of how people buy, and then suddenly following up is not such a bad idea.
Yeah, that's cool.
because they understand the pattern that people go through, and I've seen it over and over and without fail. It's just, it blows me away, and it's a great opportunity for people to maximize their investment in marketing. And a lot of people are just leaving so much unbanked sales revenue on the table.
Unbanked, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's just sitting there. In fact, another way of looking at it is a lot of people are literally generating leads for their competitors.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good spin on it.
You know what I mean? Because if your competitor's following up, you just generated a lead, and then they went and got 2 other quotes.
Yep.
It's like you paid for the lead, and they made the sale. You know?
Yeah.
It's sad.
Like you wanted to say something, I can tell.
I did think of something, and then it suddenly went out of my mind because the unbanked bit got me. But I've remembered, I think it was around, John. I loved in your workshop in this section around follow-up, actually, that we don't use the word follow-up. And I liked when you were just talking about just then the way that organization would say simply, it's not a sales call, simply I'm. So I think I love language. I think that's a really big part of it, isn't it? And without being scripted and really robotic about it, I think getting people comfortable with the language is a huge, powerful thing that you do with people.
Yeah, there's language is so powerful, and there's so much baggage around certain words. So, I can have 100 people in a room, and I'll say, what comes to mind when I say the word follow-up? Or when I use the phrase follow up, and everyone will go, salespeople, salesperson, and so everyone just has that association, and it's like, okay, well, we don't want to trip that wire in someone's head, and there's all these trip wires around certain words, and follow up is one of them. So if even though we call it, I have to call it follow up because otherwise no one would really know what I was talking about. It'd be too ambiguous. But when you're actually talking to an actual client, that's the last thing that you want to say. Yeah. Even though that's what you're doing, which is kind of weird. But the best thing you can say is, I'm coming back to you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm coming back to you, because there's all sorts of different things that are implied through using that language. It's like, I'm coming back to you. It's like, okay, well, there was an obligation. There was an obligation, there was an understanding, there was an agreement, which there is.
Yeah.
Because, and then the other thing that I say to people is like, okay, well, let's just walk this through, right? So you get contacted by, ABC Flooring. You contact ABC Flooring and you get a quote. They give you a quote, they come out, measure up, give you a quote. You didn't buy on the day. They rang you and followed up once. How did they follow up? Well, 87% of telephone calls go unanswered, so they left a message on your voicemail.
Yep.
You either didn't check your voicemail or you checked it and forgot about it. Then you went and got a quote from, Acme floor covering, right? And that they came out, did a measuring quote, and then you ended up buying from them on the day or something. Now, a week, 2 or 3 months later, you're at a barbecue and you're talking to a friend, and they say, "Oh, yeah, I just got some flooring done." And you go, "Oh, really? Who'd you end up going with?" And they say, "Oh, I went with ABC Flooring." Well, the person's going to say, "Actually, you know what? Yeah, we got them out to do a quote for us, but then we never heard from them."
Yeah.
That's how people remember stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's this whole idea of revisionist history. So it's not only an important thing from a revenue perspective, it's also an important thing from a brand perspective.
Completely. The amount of people that I've had said to me over 17 years, same amount of time as you, mate. That yes, Snap and Lois
I'm
about
only
the same.
15.
She's only 15.
Officially.
That's all right. You'll catch up. It's all good.
Yeah, that's it. And Lois has had the same because, thanks for getting back to us. And they say it with a surprised tone in their voice. We contacted blah 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 and some other people, and we haven't heard back from them. And so the key that I always say to clients is get back to them as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And none of this, I say, and typically in my experience, if it goes longer than 4 hours, you're pretty much stuffed. 48 hours, you're absolutely dead in the water. But because just other people are going to get there before you. So response time to incoming leads or inquiries is, I think, an extremely critical point that some people and businesses seem to miss. I don't know why that is, but
the data on that is that if you get back to a web lead within 5 minutes, you're 9 times more likely to convert them.
Wow, 9, yeah.
And so you can find these stats on infographics all over the internet.
Yep.
But I'm always a bit skeptical, and I want to see a practical a practical illustration of the data. I mean, it stands to reason. Someone's online, they've just clicked on a form, and then suddenly the phone rings. It's like, oh wow, fantastic. But I thought, well, when I first heard that, I shared it with a client of mine that does security systems, and they're a big brand, big WA brand, and they get a lot of internal referrals because they have a security division, but they have all sorts of other, they have an insurance division and a whole bunch of other divisions. So they get a web lead, and before I started working with them, they had a drop-down menu on their website, and there was, pick 3 windows where you would prefer to be contacted. And I think the first one was like, 9 until 11. The second one was 11 until 1, and the third one was 1 until 4 or something.
Yep.
And when I told them that data, they took that off their website, and the policy was, provided it's within business hours, if we get a web inquiry, you ring them straight away. And they record their calls, so we listen to the response. Someone's on browsing, and they've just hit submit, and the phone rings, and they're just like, wow.
Oh,
thank you so much. Oh, yeah, it was really quick. Wow, awesome. And it has literally translated into high conversions.
Yeah.
Such a great point.
It only makes sense because you're catching that person in that frame of mind, and they've just literally sat down in front of their computer or on their phone and typed in something. So rather than you calling them back in 20 minutes when all of a sudden they're bathing their kid, or they're at work talking to a client, or whatever it is,
or cleaning the cat box,
or doing that,
important things,
or the bunny cage, anything nasty like that. Yeah, but if you catch them, and that's why I personally also think, and we get a lot of our clients to test this out as well, is live chat, because you've got them there and then instantly. It's even quicker than phone in a lot of cases, and you can get to them. But all of these things need to be experimented and tested, and I think that's why I think having a conversation with someone like John, if sales has been something that you've been thinking of improving, I don't think it's a case of thinking. You need to absolutely get on top of it.
I feel like
sales and marketing.
It's a life skill, really, isn't it?
Oh, it is, and it's not something that you did. It's something that you do. It's like any skill. If you don't do it, it actually atrophies. And I've seen so many different people that haven't been in that space for a long time, and they kind of forget completely.
Mm-hmm.
It is a skill that can very, very quickly atrophy. So yeah, you need to keep current and keep doing it.
And what are your thoughts about small business owners who sort of hand off that skill to a dedicated staff member, like a salesperson, and don't have it themselves? Is that something you think, well, yep, that's fine? Or do you think that the owner should have an equal level of sales skills and understanding as someone they're outsourcing the job to, whether it's internal or external?
The scenario that I see too often, and there's too much of a pattern of this, that I've seen, and it's terrible, is where you have someone starts a business. Typically they've got a technical proficiency in something. So it could be anything. It could be financial planning, engineering, training, coaching. It could be any number of technical type proficiencies, or even just an understanding about the product. And they think to themselves, well, I've grown to this particular point in time, but typically that growth has come from existing network and repeat business and warm referrals.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a very, very typical scenario that I see. And so then they go, okay, well, I need to take things to the next level. I'm going to hire a salesperson.
Yeah.
And even so there's two things that they can do, but they both basically end up ending the same. And it's they might be running ads, so they might be spending ads and generating leads through paid advertising, or they might just be putting that person in a BD role as well as a sales role and saying, hey, these are the people that we want to go after. You've got to generate your leads and you've got to convert these people.
Yeah.
So they'll get a salesperson, they'll pay them maybe 70, 80 grand and put together some sort of a commission structure. That person goes out on the road and doesn't perform. Why? Because they haven't got haven't actually got a process that converts. They haven't got an actual framework that they can use to actually bring someone in and convert a sale. Even if they've had success in a previous role, if it's a new product, you need a process that reflects that product, that industry, that target, all that. Mm-hmm. And so 3 months goes by, they haven't made a sale. 6 months goes by, they haven't made a sale. Before you can blink, 12 months has gone by and they haven't made one sale. It's cost them 70 grand plus the car, plus super. So they're, 80, 90, sometimes 100 grand in the hole, and they got no extra revenue. And that can bring a small business to its knees.
Yep. Seen it happen.
100 grand of profit out the door because they didn't do it correctly. And one of the best things that you can do is to be, as a business owner, regardless of whether you think that you're great at selling or not, is work with someone to create a process and at least have some experience in what that actually looks like and sounds like with a client, because that way at the 3 month mark, when your new salesperson starts telling you that it's tough out there and people aren't buying and we're too expensive and starts feeding you all these excuses, because you've done it before, you'll know whether that's crap or whether it's accurate or not.
Yeah, good point.
Because in the absence of actually selling a client, a salesperson will sell the business owner on why he's not selling anything.
Yeah, absolutely. They do a better job of that than actually selling the product or service that they've been engaged to do.
I've seen it happen so many times. It's such a trap, and it's just and then I might be in a conversation with, oh yeah, well, we're just going to try this person out and see how they go. And then they leave and they come back to me and they go, yeah, maybe we should have spoke to you before we hired them. I'm like,
yeah, it would have been a hell of a lot cheaper and more profitable in the long run. So,
in fact, I got one client who's just done that. Exactly.
Oh no!
They're like, oh yeah, we've just done, and he was like, oh yeah, she's really experienced, and I think she gets it, and she's going to be great, and she presents really well, and then I rang him like 6 weeks later. So how are you going with such and such? Oh, she left. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Oh, because she just she wasn't able to do it, and and he was talking about how she gets it and she's amazing. She's going to be amazing. So yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah,
but so that is my long-winded answer to that question.
Yeah, I'm like you. I've had that happen many times.
Yeah,
and it doesn't. There are obviously cases where it's very good and it works well, but typically I think it's when, as you say, there's some sort of system and training in place for whoever comes in to be able to pick up and understand what that business and product is about, rather than just trying to use some standard methods that worked when they were doing job X with another company that sold dental chairs, and now they're selling hearing aids. You know, it's like, okay,
it's totally
electronic,
different.
but it's not
Totally
the same.
different. I had one guy. You've just sort of sparked my memory on this. I had this one guy who he was selling a coffee van franchise,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the number one best selling person, best salesperson in the entire country. Right?
Yep.
He was selling truckloads of this coffee van franchise, and he left, and he had a new gig where he was selling advertising on those interactive screens in hotel lobbies.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So people, like, you know, local tour businesses and restaurants and stuff, they pay for ads on this interactive screen in a place like the Duxton or, you know, the Ritz or, you know, wherever.
Yep.
And his gig was to sell advertising on that thing. And he came to me, and I said to him, so, you know, what, you know, what's the, you know, what made you want to give me a call? And he go, oh, well, you know, I was a top salesman in this coffee franchise thing. And he just goes, I have no idea on how to go about this. And I said, well, surely you must have some idea. I mean, you've been the top selling guy in the coffee franchise. He goes, look, it's a totally different product, and I just don't even know the first place to start. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
here's a guy that's at the top of his game, and he goes,
Yep.
we had a system that I used the system and it worked, and da-da-da. He goes, I haven't got a system for this. I need one. And I'm like, okay. That makes sense.
That's good.
Yeah.
But he had the humility to realise that, didn't he? And reach out and rather than tackle it just the same. Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
So he realised he needed some help to you know, get that nailed first, and then that would allow him to have a track that he could move along to hit the outcomes that he wanted.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Superb. So, Lo, is there anything else you got for John?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to open up a big topic here, but like I'm always quite fascinated by sort of like the yin and yang of the marketing and the sales. And we hear a lot about sales and marketing, but I wonder if it's more like marketing and sales. And I know, John, you do talk about that as well. It's not super siloed into purely sales approaches and sales follow-ups and things like that when you work with people and you have a really good understanding of the marketing process as well. So maybe the two of you can make some sense out of that question.
Yeah. I don't know. Ed, did you want to lead with that one?
Well, I think marketing is creating awareness of a product or a service or a brand, to get them to the point where they're then having a conversation with that brand, and that's where the selling comes involved. And yes, there's crossover. Part of marketing is selling, and part of selling is marketing. You know, I think you can't have one without the other. That's my personal opinion. But I think marketing creates the awareness. That's how I look at it. But say, our job is in terms of lead generation or any of that sort of process, we get them to the point where they've made the inquiry, but then that's where the business has to then deal with that inquiry. And that's where having good sales skills comes into hand, because if they don't have good sales skills, all of that lead generation was just a complete piss up against the wall and a waste of time, and that nothing happened. And I've had conversations with clients where I've touched base with them and said, look, you know, how's it going? How are you going with the leads? And we go through the leads. And as we said earlier, they've had leads that have come in and no one's contacted them for 3 days. I'm going, well, that's it. You just completely wasted all of that time because you went, oh, but we're so busy. So, well, that's where you need a system. You need something to deal with those inquiries that are coming in. If you can't handle them, if they're coming in so rapidly, you need to have a sales process in place. And this is not, you're working, I won't mention the names of the client, but you're working with one of our clients now who have had a similar challenge. And particularly if they're very sales focused over the phone, that's a very different skill to selling via email. So they're all different aspects. Anyway, that's me dribbling on about that subject.
Yeah, look, it's. I mean, there's a couple of things. You know, one of those things relates to the actual, you know, process in place that you can use to maximize that opportunity. And so, you know, so there's obviously lead generation, and then there's lead nurture,
Yeah.
And then there's conversion optimization.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is obviously product delivery. So that's got to be good.
Yep.
And then the last part is upsell, resell, and retain.
Yeah.
And so the lead nurture part is often a big hole in the. I talk about holes in the bucket. The lead nurture part is normally a big hole in the bucket. Conversion optimization, that's often a big hole in the bucket. Most people are great with product delivery.
Yeah.
I don't need a lot of help from me on product delivery, but then there's also retention. So, how do you retain someone? How do you resell somebody so they stay? And then how do you upsell?
Yep.
And
Big
how do
part.
you?
Yep.
And so all of those are really, really important. In fact, in my wife's business at the moment, she's got a weight loss and nutrition clinic. They do a fantastic job. They've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testimonies where they have literally changed people's lives. It is that good. I'm not just saying it because she's my wife. It's that good a process. But
of course, yeah.
We did a and they've got a database of a whole bunch of people that have done a program but are no longer current. So they did a program at some point since 2011. And so we did a survey with the database. And what we found is that around about 80% of people had slipped back into bad eating habits.
Yeah.
After they had done their program. And so there's this massive opportunity for her to offer a monthly continuity accountability program. So we've built this thing now, and we did this reactivation campaign with the database, and there was like 100 people that put their hand up and said, "I want this."
Wow. That's
So so we did the survey, so it was like, okay, well, that gave us the confidence. Looks like there's something happening here. And then we wrote the email, we sent it out, and then there's like 110 people put their hand up, and I think they've got something like 30 appointments booked in for people who are coming back in, who've already done a program, who are at least going to spend $100 per month for ongoing to make sure they stay on track. But that's a huge hole in the bucket, and that's just one.
That's just one. Yep. Yeah, and there's so many. It's just crazy. It's just but that's fantastic. The repeat offenders program, is that what you're going to call it? No, not good. That's not a good title.
I think it's called ongoing accountability, because that's what people need. They want accountability to keep them on track and make sure that they're putting the right things in their gob.
Yes, because marketers do a very good job of getting you to put other things in your gob.
They most certainly do. They most certainly do.
Assholes.
But the other one, the other one that I often see is where you've got I think a classic example of this is where people aren't problem aware. Right. So one of my clients has it's a job management software solution. Mm-hmm. And he is dealing with a lot of trades type businesses. So, stonemasons, cabinet makers, those type of people. Now, those businesses are run and operated by tradies.
Yep.
And tradies did a 4-year apprenticeship on how to, bang nails into wood and build things. And they're awesome at that. But they don't get things like profit and loss. They don't get things like profit per job. They don't get things like wastage and cost per employee and all those type things. And so they're ringing up and they're saying, "Hey, we've got this, we've got this amazing software. Do you want to see a demo?" And so they're showing them this demo, but they're not problem aware enough to understand what the actual software fixes for them. So we've put together this education-based marketing presentation that sits in between contacting them and showing them what the actual software does.
Mm-hmm.
Because unless we help them to understand that there's actually I guess what you might say, holes in their profitability in their business, and actually point out where those holes are, because at the moment they're not aware that there's any holes there at all. Until we actually make them problem aware, the demo doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Because the guy's like, oh, I don't, this is all this numbers stuff. I don't know about that. I'm a carpenter, for crying out loud.
Yes.
So that can be massive.
I'll sit next to those guys at your sales mastery class. Hey, Aaron, if you're watching. We haven't mentioned names, but they'll know who they are.
Yeah. So Aaron, so I mean, and their thing, that their solution is awesome. Like, it's fantastic.
It is. Yeah, it's great.
But they're not being able to help the amount of people that they like, because for so many, what they're talking about with the software just goes straight over their head.
Yeah, they're not matching the message to the marketplace, which is
and they're not educating the person as to what they should be looking for in a job management software.
Yeah,
they might only be thinking about one thing, but there's a whole host of other things that software, a whole host of other problems that software fixes.
Yeah.
So
it's a very good point.
Yeah. Sometimes that can happen someone downloads a free report, or someone gives their email address in to watch a video. So sometimes it can happen like that. But in this situation where, we're contacting the person and we're actually, running that marketing live. And I think at some point we'll probably do the same thing. There'll be a landing page and they can put their details in and they can watch video that educates them. But so often that's a really important piece.
No, that's fantastic. And these are the sorts of things that you go over on your one-day workshop masterclass. So people should check it out. And thank you for sharing many nuggets with us today, John.
Pleasure.
It's been awesome. We could keep talking all day about this sort of stuff, I know.
Definitely. Love talking to you guys always.
And ditto. And it's been great catching up with you. I'm glad you're well and business is going well, and you survived the whole
zombie
lockdown.
Apocalypse.
Look, it has been a bizarre time.
It has.
And just probably before we finish up, just touching on that, is anything that you would recommend, because a lot of people who are stuck in a position where they can't operate as they normally would be operating. Are there any things that you can recommend that people do in terms of not necessarily online? I just thinking outside the box of how they get in touch with their customers. And we've had these conversations before, is using something different to draw attention or create awareness of what you do, because everyone's gone digital. But I personally think there's a lot of opportunity to go back to being, using things like snail mail and sending, and you've done this before. You're sending packages of stuff to people to get their attention. Before we finish up, is there anything you would recommend people to do in this scenario where they're having to think differently?
This is a really good tool.
The good old smartphone.
You know what I mean? Because so many people are, they're in lockdown, they're preoccupied. One of the first things that I did when all this started to happen, even before I kind of worked out how I was going to kind of navigate my way through it, which admittedly, it actually took me a while to work out, okay, I know I want to help, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. I just got on the phone and rang people, and and there wasn't any agenda. It was just, hey, how are you going? And, what's one thing I could do that would be most useful to help?
Nice.
And for some people, they just kind of wanted to, well, actually for some people, for most people, they just wanted to get a bit of a read on, because I speak to so many different businesses. It was just nice for them to get a bit of a snapshot of what everyone else was doing and how everyone else was kind of navigating their way through what was happening. That was comforting for a lot of people. So just ringing, keeping in contact, ringing people, developing a new offer that's more relevant to what's going on. So
Yep.
it might be a more online offer, or it might be
Mm-hmm.
a slightly different version of your existing offer that reflects the fact that, you know, a lot of people don't have as much money, or they're not working as much, or, you know, talking to past clients, we talked about that.
Yep.
Changing delivery. So I got one client that is, they sell these torque wrenches, and they couldn't get on site. So one of the things that we've been helping them to put together is an online demo.
Yeah. Yep.
So that they
Using
can
video.
actually show a
Mm-hmm.
potential client, you know, how the product works without actually being on site, because they can't do that. And helping them to use the technology, using video and a combination of video and some other online tools to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Making sure that you follow up unconverted quotes. So, you know, so that's that whole thing where people are like, "Oh, you know, I haven't got time." It's like, well, now you have.
Yeah.
Damn.
Crap! I've actually got to go and do some selling.
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, that's
people
a good. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that slips through the cracks that people have. I'll get to that, and they haven't. So yeah, that's fantastic. And there's so many things to do, but we'll let you get back to your day, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming
Thanks,
on,
John.
and thanks, Lo, for being there, and thank you for the listener for tuning into the My Livelihood podcast. Great to have you on, and we'll have more awesome guests on the show in the future, like John, and look out for his website, and feel free to contact him for a chat about sales processes or getting on his masterclass.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
John.
guys. Take
Cheers.
care for
Bye.
now.
See ya.
Bye.